Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another part of the Music Meltdown CD haul thing that I got from Patrick. I have another box here, a smaller box this time, but still a box nonetheless. The CDs that I got from his giveaway. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into this. I assume that most have seen the first portion of this. So I'm just going to start pulling out and showing off what was gifted to me. Start out, I have three here by Sarah McLaughlin. This is a B-sides record by her right here, fumbling towards ecstasy, and then the record's surfacing. She's an artist that I kind of low-key been somewhat interested in, not necessarily because I think it's like the greatest talent or anything. I just think that she's a really solid songwriter and has some pretty good tunes from what I've heard. So just wanted to give those a shot. Next up here, we have The Seeds of Love by Tears for Fears. This was their third record. Their last one as a proper duo until the 2003 record. And I think this is actually a really underrated album. I think it's a ton of fun. This is definitely whenever they started showcasing off more of their Beatles and more Baroque influences, and I think it's really solid. Pretty underrated in the grand scheme of things. I hear some people say it's like one of their worst. I just don't understand that one bit. Next up, I have another Aretha record. This one, Spirit in the Dark. Just me wanting to collect up a ton of Aretha Franklin and just really get to know her catalog more. Moving on as well, I have a couple more by Throwing Muses here. Them being firstly their record being Limbo, as well. I believe there's one more in here that I think that I saw earlier. Let me just double check. Oh well, there is, and there isn't. So there's that. Just another side I really want to dig more into. I also have a solo record. Oh, right here. Their record as well, Red Heaven. And I as well have a solo record by Christian Hurt, here being Hips and Markers. Moving from there, I have the record Shepherd Moons by Enya. Enya is an artist that I've heard kind of being on the periphery of certain other characters that I really enjoy. And I wanted to give one of her records a shot. I figured that might be a good start. Another Christian Hirsch one, this one being the record Sky Motel. I think is a pretty high suggestion from Patrick. Figured I'd give that a shot. Another one from an artist I just covered, being Tom Petty's She's the One soundtrack. I've heard great things from another friend of the channel, Tom, with the song Walls, which has Lindsey Buckingham on it. So I'm really excited to dig into that. For this, I have a couple of jazz in here, starting out with the record Moanin' by Art Blankley. As well, I have The Maiden Voyage by Herbie Hancock. Like I said earlier, I'm wanting to get more into jazz, and I figure I have this opportunity to get some of these sort of higher thought of loved jazz records. I might as well give it a shot. Two records by a band that have kind of been on my radar. They feel like a group that I would like a little bit. I have Dubs with The Last Broadcast and Lost Souls. I like that sort of post-Britpop kind of indie rock sound a fair bit. And I hear a lot of great things about Dubs coming from there. So I figured I'd give them another shot. One of the Beatles records that I didn't own already, being Please Please Me. Of course, really solid debut. That I have an album, Deja Vu by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. This is actually a really fun, really strong record across the board. I think it's, I don't know, I can't tell if this one nowadays has more of an impact in comparison to the debut, but I prefer this to the debut Crosby, Stills, Nash record personally. For that, I have another Marvin Gaye record. This one being Midnight Love is one from 1982, his final record. Before it's having his big hit Sexual Healing. And I actually heard the record before this, and I do really like that one a lot, so I figured I'd give that a shot. Next up, I'm a pretty big Fleetwood Mac fan. As you saw in the last part, I have Fleetwood Mac's title. This is not the self-title, this is the solo record from Lindsey Buckingham, Out of the Cradle. I've heard really great things. There's an Instagram channel I follow called Discography Dives, in which he gave this record a 5 out of 5. I've heard great recommendations from Tavi as well. So I figured I'd pick that up, give it a shot. And another one that I listened to the other day, and I was just blown away. Killer new wave, killer pub rock influence, and self-titled record by Marshall Crenshaw. Love the album whenever I went back to it. So, so good. Next up, I have Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. Definitely the best thing that Wings ever did. Just a really, really solid pop rock record with a ton of great songwriting from Paul McCartney. So from there, I have the record Violator by Depeche Mode, one of my favorite synth pop albums ever. Just so good, so much fun. Not fun. This album's dark, but it's just such an enjoyable listen throughout that darkness, and I love it a ton. You saw it was on the top 100 albums. Next up, album that a lot of people kind of view, I get the impression as being like the majority of why you listen to this artist. I think that's unfair. I have the best of Legend by Bob Marley. I love Bob Marley. I did his discography when It Tastes Like Music, covered them earlier this year, and I am in love with his work. I wanted to listen to Legend because I hear it being one of the greatest compilations of all time. And regardless, it's just great to have a little bit more in. Another one of the Wilco records that I didn't own being Mermaid Avenue Volume 2, which is Billy Bragg and Wilco. I actually prefer this one ever so slightly to the debut record. I think that the songs are just a little bit more fully formed. It's a bit of a more natural pairing on this one, and just a really solid record by them. Their album I'm probably going to talk about later this month. So good, soul record. I have Al Green's Call Me. This is one that really had to grow on me, but I just love this album now. It's so good, so just a blast to listen to. Al is one of the great vocalists, I think, of his era. He's just, this album is so, so good. Stop, I have what many people would consider one of the peaks of the genre of sophisti-pop, something that if you've seen a couple of the videos here, you would all know that I am a pretty massive fan of. Being here, the record, The Lexicon of Love by ABC. It's the one that I've listened to before, and I do enjoy it, and I feel like it's one that probably warrants a couple of repeated listens for me to really dive into it and get it a bit more. Now, another artist that I'd heard of before, and I figured she might be up my alley, and there were a couple of records up to there, so I figured I'd try it out, being the artist Beth Orton, with the records Central Reservation, Trailer Park, and Daybreaker. Patrick was telling me about her, kind of like an indie folk artist. I feel like that's a really interesting one. I think I've heard her on other songs as well, so I'm really curious to dive into those. Afterwards, what many people consider a kind of classic. I've never actually heard it, so I really wanted to check it out. Being Graceland by Paul Simon. Really, from what I've heard, one of the peaks of that world music scene, 60s, so I wanted to try it out. Next up, an artist that I know literally nothing about except for his big hit off of the Batman soundtrack, being Seal with a self-titled record. Just sort of was curious because I know nothing about Seal. I never hear him get talked about. I'm just really curious about what that would be like. Next up, another one that I just haven't heard before, so I went, that I've heard before, just didn't own, being Revealed by REM. I own everything by REM up to this record now, and I'm a pretty decent REM fan. This is just one that I haven't heard yet, or I have heard, but just didn't get around to purchasing it. I'm going to be doing an REM video somewhat soon with Zach, so look forward to that. We got another Al Green here, being his record I Can't Stop. One of them that I haven't actually heard yet, but I have never been disappointed by Al, just an artist that I really love everything that I've heard from, and want to get as much as I can. On an album that I'm really, really curious about, being the self-titled Robbie Robertson record. I am a pretty huge fan of the band, as you all would know. They are probably in my top 15 favorite artists ever, a large part of that being due to Robbie Robertson's songwriting and overall performances. I figured, why not? I love the band. This came out, it appears, in 87. Interesting. Definitely curious to give that one a shot. And one more CD, just wanted to say beforehand, just thank you very much, Patrick, for doing this. It's really gracious everything that you did for people, and I'm really happy to be able to get rid of something that you would have just had nothing to do with. Final album that I got being Right on Hum by U2. I've mentioned being a pretty big U2 fan before. This is a record that I'm actually not that keen on personally, but I do think that there are some absolutely killer songs on here. Obviously, the big one being All I Want Is You, the closer on here. There's just a ton of really, really great stuff on there. That it's a shame that that album is kind of one of those ones where it's set up being kind of a 50-50. I really do wish that if they just were able to fine tune the studio tracks on there, it really could have been something extra special. That being said, though, once again, thank you very much, Patrick, for giving these away. Obviously, I'm going to pay you for the shipping, but thank you very much. I really appreciate everything. And I hope that everybody has a great day and really enjoys seeing these latest CDs that I've gotten. Y'all have a great one.